Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
High muscle mass with that. So
Okay.
You're not gaining muscle mass.
Okay.
The only other thing that you're at risk for is doing fast-paced movements, puts a lot of strain and issues on the joints and synovial fluid. So this is where you might get some little tweaks here and there and you don't know why, but you're burning a lot of carbohydrates. Okay. Now, if you're like, hey, all I want to do is I want to maintain my weight. I want to make sure that I get a good pump in there and work out. And I want to make sure that my adrenaline spikes so that I can carry that energy throughout the day, then shit, absolutely, you're doing the right workout.
Okay.
So it literally just depends on your goals.
Okay. Well, then I'm doing it right. Okay. So if I'm looking for peak energy all day long as I can get it, it sounds like I need to be walking on my treadmill 30 minutes to an hour every day, right? I need to be, is there a recommendation that you have for the incline? Because right now I'm at 8.
Everybody's different. The only thing that kind of every one of us human beings shares in common is more so our heart rate. And the 220 minus your age has kind of been proven to be BS. So it's really making sure, like, if you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a rest, 10 that you're dying when you're working out, you should be kind of in that like 3 to 5 range. It should be comfortable, but yet you're starting to feel the beads of sweat. And you're not like pouring sweat, but you're like, you know, that feeling where it's almost like that impetus of cold coming through your pores because you're just starting to sweat. That's exactly where you want to live.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. Well, that helps. That's actually enlightening as all get out. Okay, cool.
Good.
So, all right. So that's what you're doing now is you're actually working with companies, right? That's where the VC thing comes in. So
Right.
you're providing venture capital to these companies. Is there a particular type of company that you specialize in investing in?
So, I guess going back kind of to my story and, how I got here. So from working with the pro teams and kind of, again, on this path of commercialization, the fit for me was really tying together with medicine.
Okay.
And that's specifically because orthopedic surgeons are kind of this group that touches everybody from elderly and injured all the way through sports medicine and injured, right? And so this sounds horrible, but when you're injured, you pay attention.
True.
It
true.
is.
It's true. Tony Robbins even says it, right? When you win, you party. When you succeed, you party. When you lose, you ponder.
That's right. We
You start looking for answers.
Yeah, we get our oil changed in our car without even thinking about it in our mindless, but we don't exactly do that with our bodies at all. We just wait until we say, oh shit, and then we're injured. Here we go.
Right.
So
that hurts.
Yeah. So it's
I can't do what I could do yesterday, right?
Right. Yep. It's a captive population ready for change.
Yeah.
And so I found it really easy to kind of work with orthopedic surgeons and people in that realm to develop this. So from that area, I started working specifically in sports areas, medical areas, working with orthopedic surgeons, helping them develop buildings, flipping it to a REIT, to then investing in different areas. I did projects as large as 130,000 square feet, as small as 10,000 square feet. Kept developing early stage companies in medicine and physical therapy, at home care, and kind of kept this snowball building and building. Ultimately, till I was investing myself. I was an LP, helping them form SPVs, helping them form different investment mechanisms, ultimately being to where I'm at now, which is a general partner of a fund.
Right.
And in this VC role, what we do is we basically invest in 3 different asset classes. The 3 that I just said, we're doing it in sports, in medicine, and in real estate.
Right. That's cool. That's really cool. So I'm going to tell you a real quick story. So I owned one of the largest real estate companies in North America. And I was at the office one day on a Saturday afternoon trying to catch up on some paperwork. And one of the agents came back to my desk and said, "Hey, there's a guy up front and he wants to talk to the owner." Like, okay, what's the guy out front doing here? They said, well, he just showed up. We don't know what he wants. He wants to talk to the owner. I was him, right? So I walked up, introduced myself. He introduced himself as Dr. So-and-so, right? And he said, I'm from Florida. My son's in a duplex here in San Diego County, and the duplex just came up for sale, and I want to buy it. I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to have him rent out the other unit, and then he's going to live rent free, basically, in this unit while he's going to school out here. He's going to college, local college. So we started talking, and he said, he said, do this for me. And he turned to his wife and he said, go outside and get my last year's tax return. And I sort of thought, I don't need his tax returns right now, because we're not applying for a mortgage. He's paying cash for this duplex. He's literally writing us a check. I'm not joking. And I'm like, okay, wait. Don't write a check. And by the way, for everybody that's listening, don't ever write a check for a property, just hand it to a broker. That's not the way it works. Okay. If you want to put a deposit down, that's fine. But the deposit needs to go to the escrow company, not the broker. Okay. Anyway, I mean, right. So I'm trying to coach him a little bit, and he's a little stubborn, but I'm trying to coach him. He sends his wife out to their car to get his tax returns from last year. He brought everything with him so that he could qualify if he needed to. He could show what he needed, right? And so she's like, you don't need it. And I said, sir, you don't need it. He said, I just humor me. Go get it. So he brings me. He shows me his tax return. He's a doctor. The reason I thought of this was you mentioned orthopedic surgeons and real estate. He's a doctor in Florida. As a young resident, he's in a hospital in Florida that the ceiling tiles are falling down.
Oh man.
And there's all kinds of, it's an older building, and the building's really bad, and everybody's always complaining about how it's breaking down all the time, and all this repair has to be done. And so he goes to the board, the administrative board, and he says, hey, if I was to build a new hospital, because they didn't have the funds, if I was to build a new hospital, could I lease it to you on a 45-year lease? And they said, absolutely. We'd sign the lease today.
Wow. So
they signed the lease, which is key to this. Okay. They signed the lease before the building was ever built. Not a permit. He didn't have land, nothing. He goes to a client of his who happens to be a banker, or a patient of his, pardon me. He goes to a patient of his who happens to be a banker. The banker says, oh, we can do this. We're going to go buy that piece of land, build a hospital right there, and we'll use this to help you qualify. So the lease helped him qualify for the financing for the land and the hospital. It's kind of brilliant, right?
Yeah.
He's been leasing. So at this point, he was 25 years into this 45-year lease. He'd been leasing this hospital that he's also depreciating to his hospital that he's a resident in. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
And he literally said to me, he goes, look at this. When you grow up, I want you to be just like me. 71 years, I'm not joking, 71 years old, and every single dime that he made, in 700 and some odd thousand a year, was tax-free. Every single dime he made was tax-free.
Wow.
How cool is that, right? And he goes, let me show you how. He was like a little kid in a candy store. He's like, let me show you how this works. All right. And so he's showing me how depreciation works and Schedule E and all this stuff. And he's taken me through the whole thing. I've been doing this forever, and I've looked at thousands and thousands of tax returns. I know exactly how it works, but I just kind of, let him go, right? Because he was so entertained. I mean, he was literally entertaining himself, right? And he's sharing all this with me, and he goes, when you grow up, I want you to be just like this, So I'm not 71 yet, I'm 57. But when I grow up, I want to be just like him, right? I got 14 years to go, right?
There you go.
It really does come down to that, right? Because a lot of people in medicine are not business people.
That's right.
Right. And they're not looking at, instead of leasing that office, you're throwing that money away. Go buy the building. Okay. And lease to other medical groups, lease out to other medical groups, right? So I talked to a guy the other day that's the chief of staff of one of the local hospitals here. I talked to him for over an hour. And he told me that he built a medical group started building a medical group 30 years ago. He just sold it like 5 years ago to a big investment firm off of Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Do you know the thing that they were the most interested in was not the medical group? It was the real estate that the medical group owned.
Sure. Yep.
Look at the McDonald's story, right? If you ever watched The Founder,
Yep.
You know, McDonald's is a real estate company, man.
Right. It's on the land.
Right? They just happen to have burgers and fries and shakes, right? The franchises, you know, franchisees. I mean, when they made that decision, that's when they became a wealthy company. So yeah, I mean, there's some real wisdom in what you're doing. So you're coming along and helping them figure out what they need to do. Now, for people that don't know, explain what an SPV is, because you mentioned that real quick at one point.
Yes. So it's a placement vehicle where basically investors and folks come directly in. It's for one purpose, for one investment itself, and then deploys capital out to that one investment.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're selling shares.
Yep.
In whatever that particular investment is. So let's say they're buying a building. You're then going to investors, and investors are coming in and buying shares of that building, of the ownership of that building. Right. And that's how you're funding, that's how you're deploying that capital.
Correct. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. So what you're doing right now, by the way, you've got your office is in Montana, right?
So we have a 5-state region. So
okay.
we do business nationwide, but our main thesis is Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming. Yep. Gotcha. So in our region, I'm sorry, let me say that again. Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming. So I'm like, I missed one. So,
that's a cool area.
Well, in that region, it's typically it's kind of a capital desert. There's a lot of capital there, but it's pretty few and far between for where it's deployed. Yeah. A lot of the innovators, the people that are there, they're going to the coasts. So we specifically picked that reason. One, obviously, because I'm from there, but my partner and I, we really wanted to drive a difference in that area.
So what's the key to your success?
That is an extremely loaded question. That's extremely loaded. Oh my God.
Okay, besides the fact that you're one of the most talented people in the world.
Oh, geez.
What's the key to your success?
That's too kind. Honestly, it is truly always moving with an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Never taking the victim side of it.
Yeah.
If you want to go make $100,000, great. Put at risk. Do something with it.
Yeah.
Double it. If you're not willing to do that, then, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think just saying it on the nose, and there's been a lot of greats that said it, is, if you're a W-2, you're being paid by the hour, you're going to be a slave to your hourly rate your entire life. You need to get out. You need to invest. You need to take part of the world around you beyond the four walls of your clinic, your office, your home, and actually get out there and do more.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more if I tried. So people that are listening to this are looking at your success. They're looking at what you've done. Now, what you've done is you've created a great company, right? And you've found a niche. You've found an area where you operate and you're really, really good at it. And you're adding value to the people that you're working with big time. Talk a little bit about making that transition and deciding to do this. What was the one thing that sort of just made you decide you were going to do this?
You have to have a why. You have to have a purpose. So truly, somebody who wakes up every day and says, man, if they're like, well, I don't even know where to begin with this analogy, because it's interesting. I've met plenty of people who have not found their why yet.
Right.
And I've met plenty of people who have. Yeah. And it's very different as far as how they even portray themselves to just friends, family, and everybody that's out there.
Yeah.
So everything distills down to why you do what you do. And once you latch onto that and you truly find that, then you're able to drive it home.
Yeah. So, and it has to be big enough, right? Like it has to be a large why.
That's right.
You with me? Like,
absolutely.
It needs to be something like, we haven't talked about this, but we've been doing this 5 months now. In our first 4.5 months, we did just over 100 episodes. We'll do over 50 this month. Over 50 this month.
Wow, that's amazing.
We're in 28 countries. Do you know that 98% of podcasts don't make it past the second episode?
Wow, no kidding. That's unbelievable.
That is insane. And the only reason I know that is I hired a coach, right, who helped me start all this. And he literally had a meeting with me, like a consultation. And he said to me, he goes, you got to share your why with me.
Yep.
And then we need to talk about how committed you are to taking action, because most people don't.
Right.
In fact, 98% don't.
Right.
And
I
I'm
think,
like, what?
yeah. And I think people get hung up on, they're like, well, my why has nothing to do with business. Well, it does. And that's the
Everything.
big part. Everything does. Because so my why is because I have 2 phenomenal children and a beautiful wife that I want to create generational wealth.
Yeah.
I want to leave a legacy for them.
Yeah.
The legacy that I'm able to build is because my superpower is working in this space.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to figure out, how can I take what I want to do on a day-to-day basis in generational wealth?
Yeah.
How do I make generational wealth available to other retail investors, other investors, people that are trying to do things in sports and medicine and this, and how to change people? I'm not trying to change the medical system. I'm not trying to change the sports system, but I'm trying to say, I want to do generational wealth for my family. Here's how you can do it too. Come alongside. Here's the exact niche because of the superpower, because of the background that I built. Here's where I'm driving that forward.
Yeah. And the generational wealth that you're talking about will affect the way you're doing it. It will affect grandchildren you'll never meet.
Absolutely. I
You
hope so.
Like generations you'll never come in contact with. And that's mine.
Absolutely.
You know, that's exactly what mine is. I'm looking to create generational wealth for generations to come that I'll never get a chance to meet. You know, I mean, I'll meet them in heaven, but right.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, that kind of thing, right? So yeah, man, that's awesome. So okay. So if somebody's thinking about doing what you're doing for a living, how could they go about doing that?
You know, there's honestly 2 different ways. The first one is kind of trial by fire. You need to get out there, you need to make contacts. It's networking.
Yeah.
It is a system of making sure that you have the right people that are surrounding you. If you don't have the right people surrounding you, it's get into rooms that you want to be in, pay to
Right.
get into them, do whatever you have to get into those rooms.
Yeah.
That's part one. Part two, for my side, because I work in the investment side, is start investing.
Yeah.
Get a flavor for it. Do your studying, do your homework, understand how to get into that game.
Yeah. So then you can share it, right? It's
right.
it literally comes from your own personal experience.
That's right.
And that's important because people want to know that you're literally living what you're talking about, right? Like you're literally, this is what I'm doing. It's a big deal, man. It's bigger than most people realize.
Exactly.
Cool. That's awesome. So is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
You know, I think the only thing I'll say is, you know, I'm really excited about kind of how we're driving forward right now, and kind of our latest vehicle that we're moving forward is Champion Venture Partners. Champion Venture Partners was formed by myself, my partner Marques Colston, who's a former New Orleans Saints player.
We just had Marques on.
What's that?
We just had him on.
You did? Oh, perfect.
He was on last week.
Well, there you go. It's perfect.
Yeah. We had a great time.
Good. So I mean,
I didn't know you guys were partners. That's cool.
We are. So we've built this together so that we can bring sports out to the retail investors, the everyday folks, because, you know, at the end of the day, sports really does affect the masses, but there's very few points of meaningful ownership for anybody. You know, like athletes have been left out of the rooms. It's been to the high net worth individuals, the folks where their kids are playing, you know, in juniors programs, you know, they're still playing pickup hockey at night. They're not getting any meaningful ownership. So Marques and I together have formed a $100 million fund that just launched January 1st, where we're going out and acquiring cash flowing sports assets and literally have spun it so that it is a public version of a PE firm. So it's one where anybody can play alongside us.
So a PE firm is private equity.
Correct.
Just for people that don't, right? I want to make sure everybody understands, you know, what we're talking about, right? Because I don't, you know.
That's right. Yeah, and the private equity is usually, for most people, so they don't, if that don't understand, PE firms are usually reserved to the high net worth, ultra high net worth, the quote unquote elites. And
so if anybody's ever heard of Blackstone, Blackstone's a private equity company.
Yep, one of the most renowned.
But they're a private equity company that's like giant. And most people are not able to invest in that kind of thing. That's not available to them. Right. So you guys are creating. So are you part of the separation playbook? No,
I'm not part of that one.
Okay. Well, that's what we had Marques on talking about.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah, I'm very familiar, and he's fantastic.
So I got him. I'm getting him on another podcast. He doesn't know it yet, but I'm getting him on another podcast from this morning.
Good. You should. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he's a fantastic partner, and he's even better as a human being than he ever was in sport.
Yeah. Well, he's such a nice guy, and his heart's in the right place, and he's got the right kind of why, like we talked about. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is a guy that's driven, and he's driven for all the right reasons. It's really, really cool.
Well, here's the thing with athletics is people look to these folks, and where they're still getting maybe the vantage points is they're looked to as mascots, which is complete BS.
Yeah.
Versus, you got to understand. I said this towards the middle of this conversation that we had, where the same thing that made people leaders on the field is the same thing in business, and there's so much of a wealth of knowledge that athletes have to offer to the athletes.
And that's what we talked about. And after the interview was over, he said, this is different than all the other interviews. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, you talked about me. He's like, everybody wants to know, how are the Saints going to do next year? And how's this, right? And he goes, you didn't ask me that once. And I said, well, just so we're clear, I'm a huge football fan, and I do want to know how the Saints are going to do next year, but I'm not going to ask you that, right? I'm going to ask you about what you're doing to change the world. And what he's doing with this separation playbook and the training that he's providing is absolutely, completely essential. And I can tell you that because I've owned small businesses, right, for the better part of my life. I've been self-employed. And the kind of information and the kind of wisdom that he's downloading to people that are business owners is absolutely invaluable. And that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about how he's changing the world. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's so refreshing.
Things are going to do, but that's not what I'm most pumped up about. I'm most pumped up about what you guys are doing to leave this a better planet than one you found.
It's truly inspiring. And I mean, for one, thank you very much for doing that for myself and everybody else that you've had on this podcast. Because frankly, I really have not had a stage where I've been able to tell my story, especially from, kind of coming from small roots in Minnesota all the way to where I am today. And everybody either cares. I get the joke once in a while of like, because I fought professionally and I've gotten knocked out in front of thousands of people, and that they're like, well, I guess you got hit just the right amount of time, Nick, because now you're smart about things. And it's like, well, I realize it's supposed to be funny, but the condescending comments of the athlete side kind of fade really quickly. So it's
it gets a little old. It gets a little old.
Oh, it does. Okay? It does.
Because, it wears a little thin on you. And the thing is, here's what you did today. Are you ready for this? You inspired a ton of people that are going to listen to this podcast. And some of them are little guys that live in Minnesota. And they're fishing right now, and they're ice fishing, and you know what I'm saying? They're looking at people like you and Marques, and they're saying, hey, I can do this. Marques was from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yep.
There are a lot of people in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania that are going to hear his story. It's not quite out of editing yet, but once it's live, they're going to hear his story, and they're going to think, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it. You with me? That's what we're about. That's what we're about. We're about inspiring and motivating people, because here's the thing. They're going to be the future. They're going to be changing the world. You with me? You're doing it as we speak. And I could not be more proud of you if I tried.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, this is fantastic. I hope to inspire others. And for me,
you are, dude. You are. I promise you.
It definitely continues to feed my why. That's for sure.
I promise you are. I mean, the generational wealth that you're talking about building, you're building it outside of your circle as we speak right now.
Absolutely. Right now. I've worked with thousands of athletes. It's time to work with millions of people and make sure they're in the same way.
I totally agree. And if there's ever anything I can do to help you, you're going to have my number, so you can call me anytime. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Appreciate you, buddy. I'm proud of you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
See you soon. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.